Baylor, Oklahoma State, 12 o'clock Eastern start time in Jerry World on Saturday. Oklahoma State is -5, totals 46.5. But as good as this Cowboys team has been this season, they really haven't been a substantial threat throwing the football. They're throwing for just over 215 yards a game, and their quarterback is barely completing 60% of his passes. As a matter of fact, Spencer Sanders has thrown for just 16 touchdowns, along with 8 interceptions. The Cowboys rank 124th in third quarter scoring. They're taking on a Baylor club who won 8 out of their last 10, and they successfully covered the point spread in 70% of those contests. This Bears defense allows only 19 points a game. They also have a top 25 rush defense in the country. Terrell Bernard has 76 total tackles, along with 5 sacks and 3 PBUs. Meanwhile, Dylan Doyle has 72 tackles, along with a couple of PBUs and a pick. The Bears are in the top 10 in fewest points allowed per contest away from home. Meanwhile, offensively, on the other side of the football, Baylor's in the top 10 in rush yards per game. Abram Smith is gaining over 113 yards per contest, and he scored a dozen times on the ground this year. When it comes to the total, Baylor's 3-0 to the under in their last 3 contests, 4-1 to the under in their last 5. Meanwhile, 5 out of Oklahoma State's last 8 fell under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Baylor +5, under 46.5. Next ball game, Kent State, Northern Illinois, 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff at Ford Field in Detroit. Kent State's -3, total 73.5. The Golden Flashes lost 5 of 7 away from their home field this season. They also failed to cover the point spread in 71% of those very contests. Kent State's 102nd in the country in stopping the run. They're also giving up 35 points per contest. They're taking on a Northern Illinois team who rushes for over 231 yards a game themselves. Jay Ducker and Harrison Whaley have combined for over 1,450 rushing yards together. Meanwhile, Clint Rakovich has scored 11 times on the ground. The Huskies have covered in 4 of 6 away from their home field. As a matter of fact, NIU's covered in 8 of 12 ball games for the entire season. Now, total-wise, NIU's last 2 straight got over the number, 5-1 to the over in their last 6. Meanwhile, 5 out of Kent State's last 7 got over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward NIU +3, over 73.5. Next contest, it is going to be Utah State versus San Diego State. 3 o'clock Eastern start time in Los Angeles. San Diego State's -5.5, totals 50. But as good as they've been this season, the Aztecs have really struggled to cover the point spread over the past month or so. The Aztecs failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5, and they've been little to no threat passing the football. San Diego State throws for just $157 per contest, and they rank 110th in offensive yards per game. The Aztecs are also 129th in fourth quarter scoring. Now, defensively, as much as the Aztecs rely on their defensive play, they're actually 80th in pass defense in the nation. They're taking on a Utah State team who loves to air it out. The Aggies throw for over 304 yards a game, and they rank in the top 20 in total yards per contest. Logan Bonner's thrown for over 3,200 yards, along with 32 touchdowns. Wide receiver Devin Tompkins averaged 129 yards per contest receiving, and he's also caught 9 touchdown passes. And speaking of touchdown catches, Derek Wright and Brandon Bowling, they've combined for 17 touchdown receptions between the two of them. The Aggies are currently in the top 25 in offensive yards per play away from home. And speaking of traveling, the Aggies played their best football this season away from home. They went a perfect 6-0 away from Maverick Stadium, 5-1 against the spread in those very contests. And as good as their offense has been, it's actually this Aggie defense who ranks in the top 3 in the country in pass defense away from home. Now, total-wise, Utah State went 6-3 to the under in their last 9 outings. Meanwhile, 6 out of San Diego State's last 8 ball games fell under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Utah State plus 5.5, under 50. Next matchup, it is going to be Appalachian State versus Louisiana, 3:30 p.m. East. Appalachian State is -3, totals 53. Now, the Mountaineers' only 2 losses this season did come on the road. As a matter of fact, Appalachian State ranks 98th in the country in road passing. The Mountaineers have also had a tough time holding on to the football. They're 117th in the country in offensive turnovers. They're taking on a Louisiana team who won 11 straight, with their only loss this season coming against Texas in the opener. The Raging Cajuns are a perfect 6-0 straight up on their home field, and they have a top 5 pass defense at home as well. Chauncey Manick has 9.5 sacks on the year, 49 tackles. Meanwhile, Lorenzo McCaskill has 73 tackles along with a fumble recovery. Louisiana is in the top 5 in the country in fewest home points allowed. They're also in the top 10 in the country in takeaways. Now, offensively, the Cajuns have done a really nice job running the football. They're averaging nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. They're also protecting the football pretty well as well. They're in the top 10 in offensive turnovers on the year. And when it comes to the number in this one, Louisiana's 5-1 to the under at home, 75% to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, 4 out of Appalachian State's last 6 on the road fell under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Louisiana plus 3, under 53. Next contest, Georgia versus Bama, 4 o'clock Eastern kickoff in Atlanta. The Georgia Bulldogs are -6.5, totals 50 and a hook. Now, the undefeated Bulldogs have the best defense in the country. They're allowing only 6 points a game, and they're first in yards allowed per contest. This Bulldog D is also holding their opponents to just 151 yards a game passing. Channing Tindall has 57 tackles on the year, 4.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Meanwhile, Nakobe Dean has 56 tackles on the season himself, along with 5 sacks and a couple of picks, and that includes a pick 6. The Bulldogs have also successfully covered the point spread in all 6 of their contests away from Athens. Meanwhile, offensively, on the other side of the football, the Bulldogs are averaging 41 points a game. They're taking on a Bama team who failed to cover the point spread in 3 out of their last 4. The Crimson Tide also failed to cover in 6 out of their last 10 meetings with Georgia. So if you're into historical trends, you're certainly aware of that, and probably want to think about backing the Bulldogs here. Now, the Crimson Tide ranks 86th in the country in offensive turnovers. They're also 80th in the nation in rush yards per game. Now, total-wise, both offenses do have the ability to put up points on the board. Bama saw 5 out of their last 9 get over the total, throwing out the Iron Bowl. Meanwhile, Georgia saw 2 out of their last 3 get over the line themselves. The Bulldogs also went 8-2 to the over in their last 10 head-to-head meetings with Alabama. I'm going to lean toward Georgia -6.5, over 50 and a hook. Next contest, Houston, Cincinnati, 4 o'clock Eastern start time. Cincinnati's -11, totals 54. But as dominant as the Bearcats have been this season, they did fail to cover the point spread in 4 out of their last 6 contests. And oddly enough, the Bearcats are just 82nd in the country in offensive passing at home. Cincinnati also has trouble hanging on to the football. They're 116th in the country in offensive turnovers. They're taking on a Houston team who won 11 straight games. Their only loss was to Texas Tech in the opener. The Cougs are in the top 10 in road scoring, top 10 in road offensive yards per play, and as a matter of fact, I think they would probably beat Texas Tech if they played them right now. But anyway, Clayton Tune, he's thrown for over 3,000 yards and 26 touchdowns. Meanwhile, wide receiver Nate Dell is over 1,000 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. Now, defensively, the Cougs have been really good on the road. Top 10 in fewest points allowed away from home. Top 10 in fewest yards allowed per play when traveling. Houston's 6-3 to the over in their last 9. 5 out of their last 7 away from home also got over the number. I'm going to lean toward Houston plus 11 over 54. Next contest, it is going to be Pitt versus Wake Forest. 8 o'clock Eastern kickoff in Charlotte. Pitt's -3, total 72.5. Now the Panthers certainly traveled well this season. 5-0 straight up away from Heinz Field. 5-0 against the number in those very contests. Kenny Pickett threw for over 4,000 yards, along with 40 touchdown passes. Jordan Addison caught 17 of those touchdown passes and averaged 113 yards receiving a game. The Panthers are scoring 43 points per contest, and they rank in the top 3 in offensive yards per game. But it's not just all offense in Pittsburgh. The Panthers have a top 10 rush defense in the country. Javi Baldonado and Kalijah Cansey, they combined for 15 total sacks on the season. They're taking on a Wake Forest team who allowed just about 30 points a game, and they rank 100th in college football in yards allowed per contest. The Deacs failed to cover in 3 out of their last 6 away from their home field, and they're 113th in fourth quarter points allowed. Now, total-wise, 6 out of Wake Forest's last 8 got over the number. Meanwhile, Pitt saw 8 out of their last 12 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Pitt -3 over 72.5. Next and final matchup, it is going to be Michigan versus Iowa, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Michigan is -10.5 at Lucas Oil Stadium, totals 43. The Wolverines are scoring over 37 points a game, and they gain 225 yards per contest on the ground. Hassan Haskins is averaging over 100 yards a game, rushing, and 5 yards a carry. Now, the running backs also got over 1,200 total yards on the ground, along with 18 rushing touchdowns. Meanwhile, Blake Corum's averaging over 6 yards a carry, and he scored 10 times on the ground himself. This Michigan offense does a real nice job of protecting the football. They're in the top 20 in fewest offensive turnovers. Meanwhile, defensively on the other side of the ball, the Wolverines are giving up just 17 points per contest, and they're holding their opponents to only 196 yards a game passing. Michigan's currently in the top 15 in yards allowed per game. They're taking on an Iowa team who struggles offensively. They're 123rd in offensive yards per game, and they're throwing for only 177 yards per contest. Spencer Petras is completing only 58% of his passes. He's thrown only 9 touchdown passes for the entire season. Now, total-wise, the Hawkeyes are 3-0 to the over in their last 3 contests, 5-3 to the over in their last 8. Meanwhile, Michigan saw their last 2 get over the line themselves, 4-1 to the over away from home. I'm going to lean toward Michigan -10.5 over 43.